I'm going to demonstrate how to write a search bar dropdown component with React. So a search bar dropdown component is going to look like a Google search bar. So as you type in the Google search bar, a list of items is going to be listed in the options menu. And these options are returned from Google server. And basically, as you type in the input box, the input is going to be sent to the server, and the server is going to return something to you, to the client, and display it. So let's begin. I'm going to build the app from scratch. npx create React app. It's called React search bar. I will use Bootstrap for styling purpose. So it has nothing to do with the functionality, just for styling, making the component looks better. For the input, I will just use a default input. Okay. Let's open it from VS Code. Okay, the app is started. So app is this page. I will remove the default content, and I'm going to rename this to JSX. It's just a personal preference. You don't have to do this. Okay. And since I'm going to use Bootstrap, I will need to install the packages. And since Bootstrap depends on jQuery, I will also need to install jQuery. Now I will have to import Bootstrap CSS bootstrap.main.css. I believe it's this file. And the packages also include JavaScript files, but since I'm not using JavaScript functionalities, I don't need to import the JavaScript files. And also, remember this imported style sheet for this file should be imported after the Bootstrap style sheet. Otherwise, Bootstrap may overwrite whatever is in this style sheet. Okay, so let's give it a name. Search bar drop down. Great. And I'm going to remove everything here. Let's give some margin. Margin top. Oh, actually, I can do this with Bootstrap. Container margin top 2, margin bottom 3. Okay, and let's create the search bar drop-down component. And return, let's just use a placeholder to see if this app is connected to app. So they're connected. And now let's start working on the input, the search bar. I will use just I will use this input just the default one. I don't need this. And the placeholder will be search. And search bar. Okay. Actually, I'll wrap the input and this the drop down with a div called Search Bar Dropdown. And the search bar is too wide. I need to change. The width. Let's set the width to be 30 em. Great. And next, it's the dropdown. A list of options should be dropped from below the input. So I will use Bootstrap's list group. And I need to find something that is clickable. A link will work, a button will work. Let's use buttons. Right below the input, and we need to change class to class names. And we can remove everything not disable. This one, let's use a UL on order list. The option is listed. So now we have to simulate a server and a database. Since I'm not going to build a real server with a real database, we will just provide some options from this component. I will write a fake database called default options, and for let I equals 0, I smaller than 10, I increment. Default options dot push option I. So there are 10 options. 10 suggestions and 10 advices. So here is a fake database. It's simply some array of strings, and I'm gonna pass the options to our component. And we will list, let's call it options. And from the list, I'm gonna list all the options with map function. We will match options to every option to be a button. The button's content will be the option, which is a string. Okay, so now all the options, there are, I guess, 30 of them. 10 options, 10 suggestions, and 10 advices. So now, whatever I type in the input, nothing is gonna change. So I'm gonna need to provide a fake server. The fake server is gonna take some input from the input box and filter out some options and return some options. Okay, so as my input, is unchanged. I will say on input change. I will provide this function from app component. Since it's an on-click event, it will have an event parameter. I'm gonna log event.target.value. So I have to pass this in. Map is not a function. Options. Oh, no. Sorry. So as I type in the input box, you can see the input is logged from here. So now I will update the options sent to the search bar dropdown component. Let's use the React hook use state. Const option set options use state default to be empty array, and we will pass options instead of the whole database default options. And we'll create a new options, be default options.filter. We'll keep those options that includes the input value, the search value, and set options to be new options. So actually we can do this. To change which line? Line 9. Oh, here. So as I type, wait, each has a unique. Okay. Index is gonna iterate from 0 to the length of the option list, and the key I will set to be index option. Okay. So as a type OP, the server is only gonna return or passing the options that contain OP. So there are 10 options here, and if I type 0, only 3 options: option 0, suggestion 0, and advice 0. That's how the a fake server work. It's pretty similar to a real server. And now let's make a button called search and give it some styling. btn button primary with some space. Great. And now when I search for something, the dropdown is going to push this button to the bottom. So in fact, for now, this list is not a dropdown yet. A dropdown has to be it cannot push the button, the elements below to the bottom. Instead, it should draw over the elements. So its position property should be absolute. So let's do this. I will give it an ID called results. And input, I will give it an ID called search bar. And here, let's give results position absolute. Okay, so at the bottom you cannot see the button because it's covered by the options. Let's see. So we have another problem now. It's that the width of each button, each option, is not as wide as the input. It may not be a big problem if you don't care about it, but I'm gonna change it. So since we set the width for the parent, we are gonna do this. Width inherit. And we will do the same for results. So now input and the list, the UL results list, will have the same width. And now we have another option, another problem. A regular dropdown. For regular dropdown, when I click places other than the input, the dropdown should collapse. But now it doesn't. So let's do this. I will use UseEffect. UseEffect. So UseEffect can be used as component did mount. So in this case, if I log something called mount as a type, every time the page we render, it's gonna log mount. It's gonna trigger this function. But if I passing a square bracket, it's only gonna happen when it mounts. As a type, nothing is gonna happen. So this function is only gonna be triggered when this component mounts. Okay. So from here, I'm gonna add an event listener. Document add event listener. As I click on the document, it should hide this this list. Okay, let's use ref. It's more convenient to reference. I will reference the UL list. UL list. By the way, let's do another one for the input ref. UL ref. And it will be the reference for input and the reference for the UL. So when I click on the document, it should, I will log document clicked. When I click on the document anywhere, this is going to be logged. And I will say UL, let's do this, log UL ref dot current. This refers to the entire UL element. Look, see? So this is entire list. And I will UL ref, I will set this element's style to have a display of now, which is to hide it. So nothing's gonna display because I clicked on it. But if we have another problem, nothing is gonna display. So I'm gonna say onClick. Okay. Input ref dot onClick. Actually, dot add event listener. Keep it the same. Events. It's log input clicked. I'll do the same for this again, because there's gonna be some problem. What's wrong? It's not a function. What is not a function? 10. Oh wait. Dot current, because current refers to the element, and it should change the display to be flex. It's flex because I'll comment this out first. The default is flex. It's set by Bootstrap. Okay. So now when I click on input, I hope it displays the list, but it doesn't. The problem is when I click on the input, document is also clicked, so it's gonna set the display to flex and then set it to none. So just it's hidden again. So the way to prevent this is to use event.stop propagation. Okay, great. It's working. So when I click on input, only input is only the trigger, only the callback for input is gonna be triggered. Okay. I used to make a mistake. If you do the same thing here with this onClick, it's not gonna work. So this will not be functioning. The problem is probably that document is still gonna be triggered in the first place, or in other words, this onClick callback here, it's triggered too late. It's better to define it in the first place. Okay, so we can search something. I can click somewhere to close the dropdown. Now another problem is when I click on a option, the option's value doesn't go into the input. Let's fix it. So when the button is clicked, onclick, when the button is clicked, we are gonna set input reference. We'll set input value to be same as option, which is this one, which is a string. So as a type, click on option 4. Option 4 is going to be in the input. But now we have another problem. When I click option 4, it displays all the options. But if I actually typed option 4, only one should display, because option 4 contains option 4. But if you select one, it displays the old list of options, and that's probably because as I set the input box value to be option, it doesn't trigger onChange. And in that case, I might need to do this manually. So when I click on input, I will want to trigger onChange manually. Okay, this is simple. So when I search for option, click on option 2 and click on input. Only option 2 is displayed. Great. That's all.